Guys, a bunch of legal papers dropped last night revealing a ton of bombshells. I got Ron Zambrano back here to break it down. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and my goodness, we got a doozy for you. So happy to have you back, Ron. Thanks for you're on vacation. He's chiming in. Look at this guy. Thank you so much. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me back. Always
The
fun.
fans, they're like, can Ron chime in on this? So you were like, I can fit a few minutes. Thank you so much for doing it, everybody. Thank him for profusely in the comments. There's some big reveals. Pretty much the takeaway that it looks like Stephanie Jones has had Jennifer Abel's phone this whole time, pretty much getting her legal notes, getting all of her correspondence, private correspondence for months. And so what does that actually mean? I'm going to get Ron's thoughts. Also, it turns out the New York Times demanded that they get a subpoena because they weren't going to publish stolen texts. So we're going to talk about what that means based on information and belief here. So, all right. So last night, Jennifer Abel amended her answer to Stephanie Jones's complaint, counter claims and jury trial demand. Although much was similar, there was a bombshell. Jones allegedly had access to Jennifer Abel's cloud account and had access until January of this year. What Abel could not foresee was that Jones and Jones' work gross invasion of her privacy would not stop upon her departure. In fact, it escalated. Jones and Jones' work retained access to Abel's iCloud account and had access for multiple months, therefore monitoring and accepting her private communications in real time. Abel was under a mistaken impression that by switching phone numbers, she had cut off Jones and Jones' work access to her text exchanges. Not so. Abel's text messages were tied to her iCloud, not her phone number. If you have an Apple account, trust me, a lot of people don't realize, and then someone else gets your data, or your partner, or whatever else, or your ex-partner, it can be a really doozy. Careful adding all iCloud access unless you really own your computers. Abel changed her iCloud password in January in 2025 for unrelated reasons. Jones had been intercepting and monitoring all of her text exchanges, including not only with her clients, fiance, doctors, parents, and friends, but also with the undersigned counsel. Indeed, the intrusion ceased only by happenstance during the pendency of this litigation. It goes into details about the subpoena, but before I go to Ron, I gotta thank today's sponsor. Guys, have you ever had to deal with these things? You know, the ones that you put in your ear when you're out there walking and they constantly fall out of your ear in the dirt. And then you're like, do I put this back in my ear? And then there's those other times you gotta do that dance or you're afraid you're gonna step on your multi-$100 pair of earbuds. Enough! Introducing Raycon's everyday earbuds. Guys, they gave me a whole list of features to include, and I'm not reading them because I really wanted to focus on what mattered most to me and why I recommend them to you. I quality tested these out there on a run. For real, I went and shook my head around like crazy. These things never came out.
Wow.
It's legit impressive. Raycon's everyday earbuds has an ergonomic design to comfortably fit the widest range of ears, and their cozy gel tips make a custom fit for anyone.
Tate kicks things off with dominance, questioning Aiden's mindset in a way that feels more like a surgical takedown than a conversation. He's not here to play games. He's pushing disciplined strength and the rejection of weak, modern behaviors. Meanwhile, Aiden tries to keep it light, but you can tell Tate's intensity sets the tone fast. It's like throwing a kid with floaties into a shark tank. Aiden's trying to joke, but Tate's dropping philosophy like a war general. An opening that feels like a verbal slap, wake-up call included.
Plus, they look and sound amazing. These earbuds come with active noise cancellation, which is often difficult to find at such an accessible price point. And with Raycon's quick charge function, just 10 minutes of charging yields 90 minutes of battery. And look at that sick Galaxy case. You know I had to get that, and you got to get a pair too. Guys, we can't make the content here we make without sponsors like Raycon. And they're offering such a quality product that I checked myself. I endorse this product. It's legitimately half the price of those premium other guys. I'm telling you, head on over to buyraycon.com/popcorn. Use that link. You'll get 20% off site-wide. Get yourself some quality audio gear. That's a pretty big accusation, Ron.
Yeah.
You can't intercept counsel notes. Now, granted, I don't know how they're going to prove that she took those notes, but what does this mean for the case?
So, it means a lot. What it means for the case is this. One is the continued access to Abel's phone something that is wrongful? Is it illegal? That's the first thing. And I'm assuming someone on Jones's side is trying to figure out how do they make it legal. Then the second thing is that was there at one point, once the litigation started, an obligation to give notice to Abel that like, hey, I have access to this stuff, either change your number or change or use another phone because I don't know, maybe the number belongs to Jones. Those are the big implications. The second thing is it's called self-help.
Tensions rising and Aiden, clearly rattled, stumbles through his words while Tate smells blood. This is where the power dynamic really shifts. Tate's picking apart Aiden's lifestyle like he's dissecting a case study in mediocrity. Aiden tries to keep up, but it's like watching someone try to sprint in a pool, awkward and clearly outmatched. This part is all about mental warfare, and Tate's clearly in command. The silence between Aiden's hesitations says more than his words.
Which we have talked about before, which is chances are that she's continuing to get things, she being Jones is probably continuing to get things that probably in their mind helped or may not help the litigation. So there's this like spider webs into a bunch of different things. But the first thing is the continued access lawful because maybe the number didn't really belong to her or the iCloud, right? It's really the iCloud access. Maybe it really belonged to Jones or not. We don't really know that from these documents.
Right. If that's her personal Gmail or whatever, she's left and she's still using that personal Gmail, I would assume that is her property. And
Right.
so therefore, if that's the case, Stephanie wouldn't be allowed legally to keep spying on her, even though I got access and she didn't change her password. Can you make that excuse?
No, and it would go a step further because it doesn't belong to you if it was Abel's personal iCloud account, and then it can go further. Abel can add a invasion of privacy claim against Jones for willingly invading her personal life, which is it is a tort under both federal and state law. It's you have an expectation of privacy for someone not to like claw in or stay there, and that is a big no-no.
Now things get uncomfortable. Tate flips the script on modern masculinity, and whether you agree with him or not, he commands the screen. Aiden's laugh is nervous, like he's not sure if this is still a podcast or an intervention. Tate calls him out on weak habits and shallow pursuits, and the look on Aiden's face says it all. Realization mixed with resistance. You're witnessing a collision between old school alpha energy and digital era passivity. Sparks fly.
So the document also goes into detail about the subpoena. Plaintiff informed and believes and based thereon alleges that the sham lawsuit was contrived by Lively parties and Jones acting in concert to facilitate and cover up Jones's release of the data extracted from Abel's phone and personal accounts under the guise of legal process without risking detection by interested parties such as Abel, who could have intervened to stop the flagrant abuse of process. So as planned by the parties upon receipt of the sham subpoena on or about October 1st, Jones and Joneswork blithely surrendered the entire contents of Abel's phone communications for a second time, creating a veneer of legitimacy and affording Jones and Joneswork plausible deniability once the New York Times came through for Lively. So how does that play into the subpoena issue?
So what's interesting is these words upon information and belief. So when you file something in federal court, if you don't have that preamble or prefix in a sentence, it is being asserted under the rules of federal procedure that it is something that you know as personal knowledge because it is verified under penalty of perjury. Now, that's a big way of saying basically everybody knows, like if you go to court and you swear on a Bible, that everything's coming from your personal knowledge. And if you get caught in a lie, there are criminal contempt penalties. So when you file something in federal court, and if you don't put like, listen, I'm not sure, I think so, upon information and belief is this term of art. If you don't put that preamble, you could be held in contempt for perjuring yourself. That's why they're using this kind of prefix. Now, you can always do this. This isn't against the rules because you want to allege something to uphold a defense or a claim. And here, again, this connects to what we talked before about this sham subpoena, which is like, listen, this subpoena was created as a fiction in order to, quote unquote, legitimize and not supposedly run afoul of the rules of invasion of privacy, the rules of obtaining evidence. And we think from Baldoni's side we think upon information or belief, it is a sham and it was meant to perpetuate this other basically abusive process, one, and potentially civil violations, at least against Abel for the continuing access to the phone. Could be really serious. This can go beyond the current claims and you off air we said everybody's suing everybody. Well, this might be another part of everybody suing everybody.
Could any of these be considered criminal charges now if they're doing any of it?
It's like a roller coaster with no brakes. Tate doesn't let up. Aiden throws out a few retorts, but they barely land before Tate steamrolls through them with brutal analogies and relentless logic. This section feels less like a debate and more like a masterclass in verbal dominance. Even viewers who disagree with Tate might find themselves nodding just out of sheer rhetorical force. Aiden tries to joke it off, but by now it's clear Tate's not laughing.
Potentially, it depends on what type of consent Abel gave. Criminal is a higher standard, and it is something that is decided by the district attorney's office or the attorney general. So whether or not it could be a criminal charge, it's not decided by Abel. Abel can only make the claim. It's really decided by people in political positions, the attorney general, the district attorney, and they don't like to lose, even though it might be righteous. They don't like to lose, but they might do it because it is righteous, and there's a bigger story.
Yeah, it's interesting because she edited this complaint, and now new charges are in there, including violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, violations of Stored Communications Act, violation of Federal Wiretap Act, violations of California Penal Code. So that it does imply something's fishy here, no?
Right. Yes. And also to go back to the attorney-client communications that might have been still accessible through access to Abel's phone. Again, if Manat has access, or Lively's team has given Manat access to these communications, this would add to what I believe.
Here comes the vulnerability. Aiden opens up just a little, and Tate instantly flips it into a lesson on weakness and wasted potential. It's intense, almost personal. You start to see Aiden shrink a bit, not physically, but in presence. This isn't a roast anymore. It's a reality check dressed in combat boots. It's raw, awkward, and kind of brilliant in a can't-look-away kind of way. Tate isn't just challenging Aiden. He's challenging every soft habit in the audience, too.
I believe Friedman should be filing a motion to disqualify Manat, because Manat should never be saying things like that. And if they do, they should immediately, tell their team, stop looking at that. Please don't look at that anymore. There should be formal letters that we will never know because it's attorney-client privilege. But this adds to the self-help. Remember, we talked about the last time that you had me on, Andy, the self-help of you're getting things that you're not otherwise supposed to be doing. You're getting things in a manner that's really not lawful unless you have a subpoena, because no one gives a digital form. So that may add to that argument for Friedman down the line.
Interesting. So on top of that, because there's even more coming in, Justin has filed his response last night as well, amended complaint here. His response last night, both Jennifer and Justin revealed that the New York Times was aware, upon information and belief, saying it again, that the texts were illegal. Going to page 43 here, in turning over these materials to the Lively parties, Jones knew full well how they would be used when slicing, cherry picking, massaging, and in some cases, outright altercation. The Lively parties exploited Abel's text messages to great effect. Joining forces with the New York Times, the Lively parties commissioned the hit. Jones continued discussions with the Lively parties over the subsequent months, reiterating the false allegations that Wayfair had orchestrated a retaliatory smear campaign. For different reasons, the Lively parties on the one hand and Jones' work on the other needed to create veneer of legitimacy.
This is where Aiden tries to get serious, but Tate's already 5 steps ahead. Every answer Aiden gives gets dissected and reframed. He's trying to climb out a hole, but Tate keeps handing him shovels. It's a fascinating back and forth that showcases just how sharp Tate is in rhetoric and how ill-prepared Aiden is when stripped of memes and casual banter. This section shows the cost of not having a solid worldview in front of someone who absolutely does.
Upon information and belief, the Lively parties anticipated or were told directly that the New York Times would not traffic in stolen communications under these circumstances and needed the color of law. Jones and Jones' work, for their part, wanted to insulate themselves from legal exposure to Wayfair for breaches of confidentiality. So what does that tell you? How does that affect this New York Times case that they would not traffic stolen information? It feels like they knew something was off, and they're like, well, we can't do anything with this and play your side unless you go get us a subpoena, which then prompts the whole Van Zandt nonsense lawsuit. Thoughts?
Right. So you're absolutely on the dot. This implies 2 things. One, New York Times kind of saw these things as fishy and shady, as we've been using this term. But 2, even they drew a line going listen, this doesn't look copacetic. You have to assure us this is copacetic. And that probably is the extent of the New York Times's obligations legally and ethically is like, listen, this seems weird that you have this. Tell us why this is legit. And I believe, and you and I have talked about this Van Zandt complaint now all of a sudden existed to say, like, oh yeah, we got him through the subpoena. Now I'm gonna go back to the 47.1 issue, Andy. With this information, if this is true, remember we were talking about how this is an attack back on Baldoni, but Baldoni can go, if Lively is acting in malice, she doesn't get protection under 47.1. This information that their continued access to the iCloud account, that this was a sham subpoena, will help Baldoni.
The finale hits with weight. Tate closes with a mixture of cold truth and motivational fire, basically telling Aiden, wake up or get left behind. It's a brutal crescendo to a wild ride. You can see Aiden trying to process it all. His face says 1,000 things he doesn't say out loud. Whether you agree or not, the ending forces you to think. Tate didn't just win the debate. He left Aiden and probably the audience with a challenge. And that's how you leave a mark.
Block and completely undo any effect and maybe successfully oppose 47.1 because he could show that at least Lively's team was acting with malice by both continuing access to Abel's phone and two, that the New York Times was telling them, giving them notice, like, this doesn't look legit. And in reaction to that, instead of going, okay, don't use it, we'll be above board, they created this sham lawsuit.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So does this information, upon information and belief, I just bring that up again, do you think Friedman has enough of what he needs to back that claim up?
Yes. So he is able, through using this prefix, to put in allegations that he's doing in good faith, and I believe that they're being done in good faith, in order for it to stay, in order to prevent another attack on the complaint, because every time there's a new amended version of any type of either answer or claim, the other side gets a new opportunity to attack it with a motion to dismiss, or what we call a motion to strike. So he has to, whenever, yes, it's good that he's adding things and he's doing new ones, but he has to do it in a way so that he knows he's writing it with the anticipated attack coming back. So that's why he's making these things very, one, thorough, but also upon information and belief, so that the judge can say, listen, for purposes of now, I just have to assume it's true. And if the New York Times told them, they're not going to perpetuate in a lie. And this other Van Zandt complaint came in to really maybe mislead or assuage the fears of the New York Times, when Lively's team knew they were not true in the beginning, it would prevent an attack on this new pleading. And I know I'm going back in circles, but we've basically restarted the cycle by the filing of this new amended pleading by Fried.
So, well, let's go through some of these comments and I'm going to get your final thoughts of what this all you think how it's going to affect, because Friedman, even Stephanie Jones' attorney, they've all come in. Friedman blasted Jones, saying, in light of new evidence being uncovered almost daily, it's become imperative to amend our counterclaims against Stephanie Jones and Jones' work. We are not surprised at all that Jones would instruct her legal team to go on record and mischaracterize the circumstances surrounding the sham subpoena and Van Zandt lawsuit, so impressively uncovered by the impassionate group of online sleuths. Meanwhile, Stephanie's attorney told TMZ, Maran Shah, this case will be decided on the mountain of evidence that demonstrates Wayfair Studios and Miss Abel deliberately breached their contract with Jones' work, which the defendants have conspicuously failed to rebut. The defendants' weak attempts to assemble their own case against Miss Jones amounts to nothing more than a few debunked conspiracy theories and media gimmicks that have no basis in fact or evidence. The indisputable fact remains the defendants have yet to provide any substantive defense to Miss Jones's case. Everything else is just distraction and noise. Stephanie's other lawyer weighed in, saying reversing course or dropping previous touted claims, presenting zero new evidence, and putting out the world's longest and most confusing statement. What a desperate ploy by a team who tonight all but admits they're in trouble. Behind their empty gusto, you'll find not even an attempt to defend the misdeeds laid bare by the evidence, quite telling. Usually we get a lot of Friedman. I wanted to focus on because we don't usually get the other side. What is your response and how do you think this is all going to play out?
Well, again, there doesn't have to be evidence at this point in the lawsuit. It's just filing a response and answer sufficient to move forward beyond this one point. And for purposes of what that requires, it's being done. The evidence will come later in discovery, which conveniently for Jones and Lively will probably be subject to a protective order and never really see the light of day before trial, which we talked about in the last one. So these are low hanging fruit statements, in my opinion, about like, well, they haven't presented evidence. Like, well, they're not in trial. You're not asking for evidence. You're just making these allegations, and they're preparing this document that they have to prepare under the law to defend themselves, and that's what they've done. This is really yes, they're deflecting because they have to defend themselves in this lawsuit, but at the same time, they don't have to present evidence at this particular moment in time. They just have to. That'll come later. Now, whether or not Jones's team or Lively's team is going to be like, oh, we're going to talk about all this evidence. They probably will not want to, because again, this is looking really, really bad for Lively and Jones with regards to this lawsuit that was created to assuage the New York Times' fears. What the New York Times should or shouldn't have done is a different story, but I think this is really, really bad for Lively's team and for Jones.
So all the gusto they're showing, that's nervousness. That it's not proving anything to you.
Yeah, it's low hanging fruit, and they're doing the best they can with what they got. But this isn't, from a legal.
Serious
if you're an attorney, you're like, this isn't the evidence time. This is just the setting up the lawsuit time. It's like, who cares?
If you guys need a trial lawyer out in West Coast, LA area, if a celebrity's done something bad to you, make sure you reach out to Ron Zambrano. Always a pleasure, sir. The audience loves you. Thank you for coming back. Get back on your vacation. Sorry to bug you. I'm going on mine too. Nope. Make sure you guys subscribe, hit the button for all alerts, hit that bell, hit the all when you get those notifications, smash the like, leave your comments. We'll have Ron back, I hope. This case is never ending. So stay tuned. We got a lot more coming. Click the t-shirt there on your right if you want to invest. Become an investor in our documentary. Ron's in it. So many more. We just got more crew members. Stay tuned.